Hey, Seth. Whenever you got us on, just tell me. We're on? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to give you a moment, if you're joining us online, to find this live stream. And if you're here in person, if you would move down a bit closer. Good afternoon. My name is Pastor Andrew Draper of Urban Light Community Church in Muncie, Indiana. If you are joining us online, we want to welcome you. We have our Sunday service at 11, but today we have a special treat after service where we are going to be hearing about the Muncie Afghan resettlement and refugee work that's going on, obviously in our state, but then here in Muncie. Jessica Snow is a part of that committee and is also a member here at the church and leads one of the subcommittees of MARC, which is the acronym for the Muncie Afghan Refugee and Resettlement Committee. She's going to share with us this afternoon ways that we can get involved. And I'm sure that she'll give you all of the details, so I won't give numbers. But we do know that after 20 years of our country being involved in Afghanistan and having many Afghans aiding the process of moving toward democracy, that when the Taliban took control, many people, especially women and children, Christians, and many professionals or people who had aided or assisted the U.S. government, were put in places of peril. Many people fled the country, many people didn't get out. And at Camp Atterbury in southern Indiana, there have been thousands of people, and many are relocating to our community. Jessica's going to go into detail about that and share with you ways that we can get involved and help, what her work is, what the work is of MARC. And we are really, really thankful not only to have Jessica sharing, but also to have her passion being used here in Muncie. Nathaniel and Jessica have been part of the church for several years now, and as they've been part of the church, I've gotten to know them and heard stories about the ways that they've served in ministries that have addressed justice issues with people who have been marginalized. And so it's really encouraging that Jessica now has a very clear calling and ways to use her gifts here in Muncie. So we're going to hear some more about that and ways that we can support and join together in this work. Would you join me in welcoming Jessica Snow?
Thank you, dear family. Thank you, Pastor Andrew, for the warm introduction. Gosh, well, guys, the need is so great globally, and there are, resettled people that are in different camps across our nation, but I'm going to talk to you specifically today about small ways that we can help here locally. And it has been the joy of my heart I feel like I was born for this, to be a part of this work, and I'll tell you a little bit about kind of my passion and what that looks like. So just the macro picture. The U.S. military evacuated a lot of people. There were over 7,000 in Camp Atterbury, southern Indiana alone. Of those, the Department of State will relocate around 750 families in Indiana. A lot of the cities, bigger cities, want that population because there's a lot of intellectual capital and labor. So a lot of those people will go to New York, Texas, Colorado, California, etc. But I have to brag on our little town. We have done an incredible job. People have been so generous with their time, their resources. We've had all of our children enrolled in school. We've had every single adult ESL assessed so they can continue learning language. Our women are engaged in English language classes. And we've just had a merry little band of volunteers organizing food before their SNAP benefits kick in, helping with transportation, and just so much of the need. So there's kind of two parts to this. First is the financial part. It costs about $10,000 to bring a family here, for 6 months. So our commitment is that we will basically pay for rent, utilities, water, heat, electric, trash, etc. And we get even food donations and household goods, etc. A lot of that is donated, so we are very thrifty. And because we're all volunteers, every single penny goes directly to those immediate family needs, but it does cost about that much per family. So we currently have about 11 families here. We're just under the 40 number, and we have another family coming in hopefully right after Christmas. So we have to date raised through incredible acts of generosity right around $108,000 here in Muncie. Yes. And that's been possible through grants and through, honestly, just everyday people sacrificially giving. We've had people who have an employer matching, giving. And then we had 2 little girls who did a bake sale and donated $10. So people have just given out of, whatever they have as God has moved their hearts and challenged them. And so that is kind of our fiscal needs, so that we can be responsible stewards in bringing people here and making sure they have a path, forward. And then we also have kind of a human element need. And that is what I'm very passionate about. Also, not possible without the finance, of course, but I believe in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. While food and shelter is obviously very, tenets of essential survivalship, I argue that belonging is that capstone piece. And if any of you are not from here, have moved ever, you know what it is to not belong. And so for me, I am very compelled by love to help people feel like this is their new home. And as such, I want them to shed the branding of the scarlet letter of refugee, okay? And we refer to them as, they are new Americans, so we refer to them as our new neighbors. We found that's more palatable for everyday parlance. People may not understand, for example, what a refugee is or why someone would be a refugee, so we refer to them as our new neighbors. And my goal is to match every single new neighbor family with an American welcome family, okay, and then a grandparent as well. Because they've come from a very large communal society. So just to give you a picture of that, your nuclear family would include your aged parents, okay, your siblings, obviously your spouse and children. Everyone has about 6 to 8 kids on average, so this is a big family. Extended would be cousins, etc. So to be literally extracted out of that and have this familial fragmentation, perhaps even at the airport, is just such loss. And so it's really important for me to cultivate belonging by giving them multi-generational ways of American family, experiencing American family. So what I'm looking for are welcome families that could give like a 90-day commitment to making sure people are acclimating, getting their feet on the ground, taking them for a few essential appointments like getting their kids enrolled in school, setting up their bank account, and then just doing fun things with them. And then also grandparents who can kind of provide some of that common sense and give the families breaks. And then respite families where my welcome family may need a break or have their anniversary or just need some time away or have plans. I can pull a respite family out of the wings to help meet those needs. And then we also really rely on drivers. We have a little band of volunteer drivers who help get people to their doctor's appointment and that interview and just those little human logistics. We do have like weekly grocery shopping, for example. We're trying to teach personal agency and independence, and we're trying to facilitate that launch as they create a new life. So I probably didn't use any of these slides. But that's kind of the two components of the work. And I just have to say thank you to the entire Muncie community for being so incredibly generous with their time and their treasure. And tell you guys, I've just been blown away by all the incredible, for example, just with ESL alone, we have emeritus and current professors who are developing curriculum as we speak. And in weeks' time alone, are creating an ESL program for Afghanis, which will launch early January. And in the interim, we've had that ESL tutoring work. So that's just one little example of how people have just unified and pulled together and really taken on this passion of love and been the hands and feet of the gospel in making that happen. And honestly, this work, I wouldn't be sitting before you today if it weren't for the belief and love and prayers which make these miracles possible. That gives me the courage every day to get someone's fingerprints for their new job and help move furniture and make sure we have formula and baby blankets and car seats and blah, 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 blah on a daily basis. So I'm just incredibly grateful, and thank you guys so much. So if you want to skip through some of these slides, there is a giving menu. Sorry, I totally didn't follow them at all. Sorry. On our cards, we have a giving menu where you can choose, for example, I don't remember the exact amounts, but like $50 or $100 would buy everyone their bathroom essentials for the month. So like toothpaste, shampoo, etc. So if you say, well, gosh, I can't support a whole family arrival, but maybe I could do $100 a month or $50 a month to make sure all the kids have, shampoo and toothpaste. That's just one. We kind of have that menu here. Here you are, $50 a month for toiletries. That kind of breaks it down into little digestible size pieces where you might feel like where your dollars are going and how they're being spent.
Jessica, would you mind if I just ask you a few questions
Absolutely.
to kind of get some of the background
questions.
and then maybe we can get a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
How did Mark come about this committee? How did
Yes.
it get started?
Thank you, Andrew. So 20 years ago, there is a gal in Muncie who was a refugee herself, Bibi Barami, and she started a nonprofit called Awaken, which at that moment they were actually sent, her husband and son became physicians, but she sent medical teams back to Afghanistan to provide critical care for women and children. I believe they have like they had a hospital facility there and school for girls, etc. And then, of course, after the Soviets and then internal fighting and then this period of peace-ish with the U.S. military, and in most recent times since the Taliban's takeover, that's looked different. So currently, they haven't even been able to send medical supplies. They've honestly just been trying to send money, and even that's been very difficult. But they're still trying to meet those humanitarian needs. So they were set up as a 501c3 already, and had been doing 20 years of really incredible work. And at this moment, when the Taliban took over and Kabul fell, they were able to, with this incredible vision and historical foresight, be in the right place at the right moment for us to use their 501c3 to accept financial donations. And Bibi, her primary goal is to get people out of Afghanistan. So she's working with the Department of State and other she's written appeal letters to the governor, et cetera, to try to petition for people to come. And that basically her vision is been what's made this possible.
Yeah, thank you for that. And if anybody online is wondering, why are people having to flee? I mean, we've mentioned the Taliban takeover, but can you explain a little bit of maybe what that means, especially for families, women and children and such, how maybe their lives have changed or shifted a bit?
Okay, this is really heavy, but if you'll bear with me. Basically, the Taliban is a terrorist organization, as is commonly known, and anyone that assisted the U.S., be it taxi driver, special ops, translator, anyone that had education, or anyone that did not subscribe to the oppressive totalitarian state religion is instantly targeted. And by targeted, I mean going door to door, looking for people of other faiths, people that speak English, people that are educated, and targeting them for their execution. So I've heard really terrible stories. In fact, I don't know, I don't want to go into great detail, but the IMF has frozen funds, okay, to try to prevent the Taliban from committing genocide. But what that has meant is that they use Blackwater money to go about their nefarious acts. And in that void has created a liquidity crisis. So people are starving, quite frankly. The GDP per capita is $5,000 and falling. So that is starvation. So what that's looked like for families is that even if the U.S. extracts, say you as a husband and father, they may not be able to extract your entire family. So you have to petition for your family to join you. And they are in very precarious financial and food vulnerability positions.
So in other words, many of the families who are coming here have probably been through crisis and trauma, maybe are separated from other family members.
Very much
Is that
so.
fair?
Yeah. In fact, a lot of people, if you were of any high profile position, you would be moving from safe house to safe house to try to disappear and hide under the auspices of peasant farming to avoid being targeted.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as you've mentioned, many of the families who are coming as well are highly educated professionals in their own country. And so not only is this an opportunity, it sounds like, for our community to help others, but also that the people who are coming here are very much helping our community and investing. I mean, we know one of the things that we lose often in a post-industrial town is once people are educated here, oftentimes people leave. And so what have you experienced with maybe some of the, gifts or some of the blessings that people from Afghanistan have brought to the community? Do you have anything that you might be able to share about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can tell you just some overall stats. I think it's around 96 or 97% of all small businesses are in fact started by the entrepreneurial endeavor is started by immigrants. Why? Because you've lost everything. So what do you have to lose? You give it all. You try. You give your life trying. And if it's not for you, it's for your children. You want your children to have a better life. So you will give everything. So some of these examples have been, and we have a range of people coming who are arguably a very good asset for Muncie. So my most or underprivileged person is illiterate in his first language. And then I have 3 people who have their MBA. Okay, one of them worked in the failed Afghani presidential palace, very polished, very professional. These are people who hatched and grew businesses and then sold them and at a very high level. And so one guy wants to start an Afghani restaurant. I'm like, bring me the good food. So we have people who have these incredible resumes, background experiences, dreams, who are so courageous, so humble, and willing to begin a new life, even starting at an entry-level position with the dream that they will be able to make a difference. The guy from the palace told me, he said, my dad told me if I start in a small town, if I start this Afghani restaurant in a small town, maybe a couple years I save some money, then I can franchise it all over the country.
Nice. So the Muncie Afghan Refugee and Resettlement Committee is a group of people that has subcommittees, and you are the chair of, what is that subcommittee called?
The Welcome.
Okay.
Welcome Committee.
So some of you might know Ari Hurwitz, who is chairing the fundraising committee, and I've committed to him that our church will make a donation before the end of the year, but also what Jessica's sharing today is if there are ways that you can give financially above and beyond your normal giving to the church, how might they go about doing that?
Right. So we do have little cards that, if you're technologically savvy, have that code on the back.
The QR code?
QR code.
All right.
There's also our website, which has that giving menu I mentioned. That just goes instantly and that goes through the 501c3 account, so it's entirely tax deductible, if that taking deductions is still such a thing.
Yeah. Well, and also if you, in addition to that, I assume somebody could give you a check today.
Absolutely.
Or something, or if online you have you have trouble accessing that, if you make a note in your giving to the church that you want to designate it to Mark, we can pass those funds on as well. Nonprofits can do that.
It would be made payable if you write old school checks, make it payable to Awaken, and in the memo field write MARK, which is an acronym for Muncie Afghani Refugee Resettlement Committee.
Okay, wonderful. Anybody here have questions that you might want to ask Jessica briefly?
Yeah, I would welcome your questions. Yes, Kara? Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to repeat
I
what you say for
welcome
the
that
people
too.
online.
Okay.
Kara says, I have a question that's actually in the form of confession.
So my husband plays frisbee with a couple of folks that are refugees.
Yes.
He wanted to have them over for dinner, like on the spot. I was concerned that we didn't have. I know they eat, certain kinds of like halal meats and things like that. So I was just worried that we wouldn't be able to accommodate them in a way that would, say that we thought in time with this. So in terms of just being welcoming, is there any sort of like training about like cultural components and cultural sensitivity that that might make people feel like I'm going into this thing informed?
Let me summarize that real quick so that people can hear it. No, you're great. She was saying that her husband plays frisbee with a couple guys from Afghanistan and wanting to invite them over for dinner, but just not knowing if certain meats or things need to be halal, and are there cultural considerations that they need to take into account, and is there training or anything along those lines so that we're appropriately welcoming to our Afghani neighbors?
Yeah, great question, Kara. So there are just a few things to consider. Halal is almost equivocable with kosher, which is the way that something is butchered, is in a clean manner. Although I have had people secretly tell me, I eat pork. But generally that's going to be, they like fish, chicken, and the beef would just be a kosher beef. So, but I think that they're also very aware that they're coming into a new culture, and I'm sure I break all kinds of little social little innuendos I'm not even aware of in any given moment. So they're very kind to me in understanding that I'm working with the information that I have. As far as training and cultural information, it's a two-way learning, so I in no way am an expert in this, but I think that they are being patient again with me and teaching me some beautiful aspects of their culture, and then we're also being open and vulnerable, asking them, we're inviting them to ask questions of our culture and our traditions. We had someone the other day who saw the crepe and said, what is this? And our welcome family had the opportunity to say, oh, well, that's a manger. And explain kind of Judeo-Christian Christmas, and then sort of the Americana version of that. And they were explaining this and thinking, gosh, this sounds so fantastical. So I would say, in a word, there's not really any all-encompassing training. Like, none of us are trained. I think that I just ask that we move as the Holy Spirit leads and trust Him. And if we move with love, then there's nothing that can't cover that. So whatever problems they come to me, my washing machine broke, I can't find blah, 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 I missed the bus, what about my ESL, la, la, la. I just tell them it's going to be okay, because there's nothing that love can't handle.
And I assume that also with the committee, Kara or others could maybe even get in touch with you or people on the committee to have
absolutely.
maybe some further conversation about some of the cultural norms and things?
Yes, I of course welcome conversations. I am working to create kind of a video archive, like a digital repository that has lots of information, everything from ESL, K through 12, food, nutrition, housing, financial literacy immediately, and then later, just to help prepare people for independence. So those are things that I'm working to create. That's still in process right this minute. I'm actually working on a ladies' tea, because in their culture, the women are very separate, and in our culture, that means being put down. But in their culture, that's a way of honoring and protecting their women, and also understandably during the Taliban, that's a way of protecting their female population. So we're trying to learn what some of those things are and how they transition into an American life. But I would really I'm working on having a women's tea, so we can really develop those female relationships and honor, those women in the way that in reaching them where they are right now.
Great. We will close in just a moment, but I want to invite, I see there's several people joining online. If you want to submit a question briefly, just comment in the chat thread on either Facebook or YouTube, and I should be able to view it here and pass it on in just a second. Leslie, you have a question here.
I just wondered if there's ways that we can get families at the Inspire community, because it's not realistic for me to be that family by myself if they're not in the school community with my time and schedule. But we are a small public free school that our community is very, very good at wrapping around families and welcoming people into that community. And I think, I think one family off on its own might feel separated, but if there's a small group of families that we can adopt, I think that would be very realistic and very meaningful.
So Leslie's saying, as Executive Director at Inspire Academy, public charter school, free tuition, are there ways that families could come to school there, that their school is very good at surrounding people, but that it would be especially wonderful if there were a few families coming together to kind of build up that community aspect? So how would she go about connecting with somebody on questions like that?
Great question. I would get you in touch with the person that's our educational chair. Currently, we have everyone going through Muncie Public Schools, and they've done a great job in terms of giving resources. Every kid gets a backpack and gets a little laptop or an iPad if they're little, and then they are privately assessed until they're able to mainstream into a classroom where they feel comfortable, and we assess like what their language ability is as well. But ultimately, of course, I would want every family to have school choice. That might be a little bit further down the road. We are also working, there are some people that want to get into higher ed, even GED or college. So we're working on those pieces, but I would definitely put you in touch with our educational committee chair. My sphere is kind of here. I'm the welcome family coordinator and all these other things orb my sphere, but I'm very aware of those other needs for the overall well-being of each individual. So yeah, I think that's something that we'd love to consider in the future. And to your point about community, every Afghan family doesn't necessarily have one welcome family. It can be, because there's so many kids, there can be several families that make that composition to love well in that way.
So it sounds like the education subcommittee has been working with the district public schools, but perhaps as well could form a relationship there with Inspire, with that connection being made. Great. Any other questions? Yes. How are you handling housing?
That's a great question. That's another committee, but we do have a realtor who volunteers her time and knows a lot of other realtors in town, and we're able to negotiate. So the two groups that are in Indiana, Exodus and Catholic Charities, are the only two in the state, the refugee resettlement agencies out of the 9 nationally. And they've been amazed. They're like, wow, everything's so cheap in Muncie. Like, your dollar really goes so far here. So we've even been able to, during a national housing shortage, to negotiate those rates with private homeowners and say, would you take someone that doesn't have any credit, that doesn't have any work history, and put their name on the lease so that they're establishing credit and working their way as part of their financial literacy, and path forward, so they can eventually buy a car and their own house, etc. And we're able to get even people very generously have given reduced rates. They're not necessarily the most beautiful thing in the world, but our heart is as long as they're in a safe environment, we want to bring as many people as we can. So that's where we're trying to negotiate and, again, be very prudent with every dollar to make it go as far as we can. So that's currently how we're meeting those needs. We've primarily put people in apartments because there's a huge technology curve. People in a house don't know how to shovel snow. They may have never seen snow in their lives, depending on where they're from. Don't know about salting, or they get freaked out by the doorbell, or so having them in a rental where they're not responsible for some of those things has been a good fit for them initially. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? I don't have any that have come in online. Anybody else? All right. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for your work with the Welcome Committee And again, if you want to get involved as a host family, please, or as a welcome family, is that what it's called? Welcome family. Please talk to Jessica. You can also, if you want to contact us here at the church, we can pass you on there. If you want to make a donation, the website is there on the screen. You could also give a check today to Jessica, or put it in the designation line of your giving to the church, and we'll pass it on. So we're really thankful for this opportunity, and thank you for sharing it with us today. And then also, you or anyone else can go back and share this video now that it's online, because I know sometimes, after on a Sunday like this, after service, if we can get 10, 15 people staying back, we're doing really, really well. But one of the things we can do is we can share it online, and so that other people can know how to get involved. So thank you for your time and being here with us today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining Urban Light today. We invite you, if you want to join on Sundays at 11 for worship. And if there are any ways that we can support you during this season, let us know. God bless you. Go in peace.